For centuries, the world believed it knew who the Black Irish were. The story sounded simple: survivors of the Spanish Armada, Viking descendants, or the legacy of Norman invaders. It was repeated so often that it became accepted as fact. But what if every one of those stories was wrong? Somewhere along Ireland's rugged west coast, there is a face that doesn't match the stereotype the world expects. Not the familiar freckled redhead, but something far older. Jet black hair, skin so pale it almost glows, eyes as blue as the Atlantic itself. For generations, people searched for an explanation. Spanish sailors, they said, Viking raiders, Norman conquerors. Each theory sounded believable. Each survived for centuries. Yet none of them could explain what modern genetics eventually uncovered. When scientists began extracting ancient DNA from human remains buried thousands of years beneath Irish soil, they discovered a story no legend had ever told. A story that predates every shipwreck, every invasion, and every kingdom that ever ruled the island. The DNA didn't just challenge the old myths, it erased them. Because the truth about the Black Irish isn't hundreds of years old, it's thousands. The legend that survived the longest was the Spanish Armada. In 1588, the greatest naval fleet of its time was shattered by violent storms, leaving dozens of ships wrecked along Ireland's coastline. Survivors staggered ashore, many with dark hair and darker complexions than the local population. According to legend, they settled and married, and their descendants became known as the Black Irish. It's a fascinating story, but modern DNA reveals a very different truth. It is a beautiful story. It is also genetically invisible. Modern DNA studies find no measurable Spanish signal in the Irish population traceable to that event. Math was always the problem. A few dozen shipwreck survivors scattered across a coastline cannot move the needle on a national gene pool. Romance was never the issue. The scale was there. The Viking theory carries more actual evidence. Norse raiders hit Ireland hard between the 9th and 11th centuries, founded Dublin, and settled the eastern coastal towns. Genetic surveys confirm that a notable proportion of Irish men carry Scandinavian Y chromosome lineages. That is real. That is measurable. But that signal is concentrated in the east, in the cities the Vikings built, not in Kerry or Cork or Galway, where the Black Irish look is most consistently found. The Norman conquest of the 12th century leaves an even shallower mark. Mostly Eastern, mostly aristocratic, mostly confined to a handful of noble surnames. None of these stories reach far enough back. The real answer requires a completely different scale of time. To find the real answer, you have to leave the medieval world entirely and travel back to Ireland around 2500 BC. Stone circles rising on hillsides, Neolithic farmers working land. Their Mediterranean ancestors had settled thousands of years earlier, a population with its own genetic signature, its own lineages, its own deep roots in the soil of the island. A world that was about to be erased. The Bell Beaker. People arrived from continental Europe carrying advanced metalwork, distinctive pottery, and something far more consequential than either: new DNA. Archaeologists and geneticists now agree on what happened next. It was not gradual assimilation. It was not peaceful blending. When the Beaker culture reached Britain and Ireland, it replaced the vast majority of the existing population within a few centuries. Whatever combination of migration, displacement, and demographic collapse drove that transformation. The result was total. The Ireland that existed before the Beaker arrival effectively ceased to exist. The evidence is not abstract. On Rathlin Island off Ireland's north coast, researchers excavated the remains of Bronze Age men buried around 2500 to 2000 BC. When their DNA was sequenced, they carried the R1BL21 haplogroup. The same paternal lineage is found in over 65% of Irish men alive today. Those bones were not ancient strangers. They were the direct ancestors of the modern Irish population. The Beaker arrivals also carried the gene for lactase persistence, the ability to digest milk into adulthood. In a land where dairy became a dietary foundation, that gene spread until Ireland reached the highest frequency of it anywhere on Earth. They also carried variants for lighter skin and eyes. Those traits spread quickly, but the genes for dark hair did not disappear. They held on. In certain communities, in certain lineages, they did something more than survive. They flourished, and that is where the Black Irish story actually begins. The Bronze Age transformation reshaped Ireland through its fathers. The Y chromosome, passed from man to son across generations like a surname written in biology, tells the story of that rupture clearly. But there is a second record, a quieter one. And to understand the full picture of the Black Irish, you have to listen to what the mothers carried. Mitochondrial DNA passes exclusively from mother to child, unchanged across generations unless a mutation occurs. It is one of the most stable records in human genetics, and in Ireland, what it shows is remarkable continuity. The most common maternal haplogroup in Ireland today is H, carried by a large proportion of Irish women. Studies suggest upward of a third, with its strongest concentrations in subcategories H1 and H3. These lineages trace directly back to early European farmers and Bronze Age migrants. Irish mothers have been carrying the same DNA for thousands of years, but older signals survive alongside them. A notable minority of Irish women carry haplogroup U, one of the most ancient maternal lineages in Europe. A branch called U5 connects modern Irish women to the first humans who set foot on the island after the Ice Age. Women who hunted and fished along Ireland's wild coastline more than 7,000 years ago. Their DNA is still here. Here is what makes this matter for the Black Irish mystery. Many of these maternal lineages show their closest modern matches not to Britain but to France, Iberia, and the wider Atlantic coast. Ancient maritime connections, seafaring routes that carried entire families into Ireland long before any Viking ship appeared on the horizon. Some of those lineages carried pigmentation variants that kept dark hair alive even as lighter traits spread across the population. Ireland's fathers brought transformation. Ireland's mothers preserved what came before. Together they built the genetic range that makes everything possible. If you want to see the Black Irish face, you go west. Kerry, Cork, and Galway, lands of stone walls and Atlantic cliffs, and families who have worked the same valleys for more generations than anyone has bothered to count. There is something different about these places, not just culturally, not just historically, but genetically different. And modern science has now confirmed what anyone paying attention already suspected. In 2017, the Irish DNA Atlas Project, led by researchers from the Royal College of Surgeons and Trinity College Dublin, analyzed individuals whose grandparents were all from the same regions of Ireland. What they found dismantled the idea of a single, homogeneous Irish population. Ireland broke into 10 distinct genetic clusters. The majority of them deeply represented Gaelic Irish ancestry, and the most ancient, most distinctive clusters of all were concentrated in the west. Counties like Kerry and Cork showed stronger genetic continuity with Bronze Age Ireland than anywhere else on the island. The same legacy is visible in those Rathlin Island remains, the same lineages that arrived during the Bell Beaker transformation and never left. While most of Ireland carries a measurable Norwegian-like ancestry component from centuries of Viking settlement, the western clusters often carried significantly less. Later arrivals barely touched them. They remained closer to their Bronze Age ancestors than to their own eastern neighbors. Isolation does specific things to a gene pool. Scientists call it the founder effect. When a small population is cut off from outside influence across enough generations, rare traits do not just survive, they concentrate. The unusual pigmentation combinations that produce black hair alongside pale skin and light eyes had exactly the environment they needed in the west of Ireland to become a stable, recurring feature of entire communities. Culture reinforced what geography protected. The West was the stronghold of the Irish language, of Gaelic music and tradition, of communities that married within tight networks across centuries. Cultural resilience and genetic resilience moved in the same direction for a very long time. When you see the Black Irish face in the West, you are not looking at an anomaly. You are looking at the oldest continuously preserved genetic legacy on the island. The genetic mechanism behind all of this comes down to a single gene, MC1R. It is the primary switch controlling hair and skin pigmentation in humans, and Ireland has the most unusual relationship with it of any population on Earth. Variants of MC1R are responsible for red hair. The specific mutations R151C, R160W, and D294H each increase the probability of red hair and freckles, and Ireland carries the highest concentration of these variants anywhere in the world. That is why roughly 10% of the Irish population has naturally red hair when the global average sits below 2%. The variants are genuinely that common. But here is where the standard explanation breaks down. Carrying an MC1R variant does not guarantee red hair. Pigmentation is not a single switch. It is a tug of war between competing systems. On one side, melanin production genes push toward dark hair. On the other hand, MC1R mutations weaken the melanin signal. Whoever wins that contest determines what color hair actually grows. Someone can carry a red hair variant and still have jet black hair if their melanin production genes are strong enough to override it. This is not unusual. It is happening in Irish families everywhere. A sibling with hair the color of flames sitting next to a sibling with hair the color of midnight. Same parents, same gene pool, different outcome from the same underlying contest. The dark pigmentation alleles driving that outcome are not recent arrivals. Ancient DNA confirms they were present in Ireland during the Neolithic period, carried by Mediterranean farmers thousands of years before the Bronze Age shift introduced lighter traits. The two systems met, competed, and never fully resolved. The Black Irish face is not an import. It is what happens when ancient genetics refuses to lose. Irish surnames are not just names. They are biological records. Carry the right one, and you are carrying, without knowing it, a genetic signature that has been passed down through centuries of dynasties, invasions, famines, and survival. The name on the headstone and the DNA in the bone often tell the same story. Take the Uyghur-Nile dynasty. For centuries, they held political dominance across large parts of Ireland, claiming descent from the legendary King Neil of the Nine Hostages. Genetic studies suggest that a substantial proportion of men in northwest Ireland share the same Y chromosome lineage, a branch of the R1bL21 haplogroup that traces directly back to that ruling line. One dynasty, one genetic signal, still visible across an entire region more than 1,000 years later, and that region sits squarely in the west and northwest, the same geography most consistently associated with the Black Irish appearance. But dynasties are only part of the story. Tragedy wrote the other part. The Great Famine of 1845 to 1852 collapsed Ireland's population from roughly 8 million to 4 million in less than a decade. Death and emigration emptied entire villages. The genetic consequence was brutal and simple. When half a population disappears, the DNA of those who remain gets amplified. Rare traits that might have stayed rare instead become defining features of the surviving community. In Western Ireland, where isolation had already concentrated unusual pigmentation genes across generations, the famine acted as a final filter. The hemochromatosis mutation tells the same story from a different angle. Called the Celtic curse, this variant causes excess iron storage, common enough to be dangerous today, but likely a survival advantage in times of chronic food scarcity. It appears at its highest global frequency in Western Ireland. Its deep roots in the Irish population suggest origins stretching back well before recorded history. It is a reminder that the genetics shaping the Black Irish face are the genetics of people who endured things that would have ended other populations entirely. Modern genomics delivered the final layer of confirmation, not through one study or one finding, but through the accumulated weight of autosomal DNA analysis. The mixed genetic material inherited from both parents was applied across large Irish population samples and measured against the broader European record. The picture that emerged was precise. Ireland's ancestry breaks into 3 ancient streams. Estimates suggest roughly a third traces to Western hunter-gatherers who returned to the island after the Ice Age retreated. Roughly another third or more comes from early European farmers who sailed north from the Mediterranean, carrying crops, livestock, and dark pigmentation alleles that never fully disappeared. The remaining portion arrived with the steppe pastoralists, whose Bronze Age migration reshaped the entire continent. That three-way balance has remained essentially stable for nearly 4,000 years. Few populations anywhere in Europe can claim that kind of continuity. The later arrivals left their marks, but not evenly. Viking influence concentrated in eastern coastal cities. Norman signatures appeared mostly in aristocratic eastern lineages. The Ulster plantation left its mark in the north. The West absorbed almost none of it. What modern genomics confirmed is exactly what the geography and the oral traditions had always suggested. The western counties of Ireland were never overwritten. The oldest genetic layer survived intact, and the Black Irish face looking back from those Atlantic communities is not a mystery requiring explanation. It is simply the oldest face in Ireland, still there, still recognizable after 4,000 years. That face on the west coast of Ireland was never an anomaly, never a genetic accident, never the lingering trace of a shipwreck or a raid. It is the most direct living connection to the people who built the stone circles, who survived the Bronze Age transformation, and who held their lineages together through isolation and famine and everything history threw at a small island on the edge of the Atlantic world. The myths were always more comfortable than the truth. Spanish sailors made for a better story than 4,000 years of unbroken genetic continuity. Vikings made for a more dramatic explanation than the quiet persistence of Neolithic pigmentation alleles in communities that simply never got diluted enough to lose them. The romantic stories survived because nobody had read the bones carefully enough to replace them. The DNA has now been read, and what it says is not complicated. The Black Irish were never foreign, never mysterious, never the product of some outside force passing through and leaving its mark. They are the original face of the island, preserved in the West by geography and culture and the particular ruthlessness of survival. Identity is never as simple as a stereotype insists. The same island that gave the world its redheads kept something older underneath. It was always there. It just took science long enough to confirm what the west of Ireland never actually forgot.